Well, welcome to our podcast. We are excited to be back with you. I am Dean Nixon with the, as always, lovely Kate Semmens.
Thank you, Dean.
And we are excited to get back into our podcast. We have had such great feedback, and we really appreciate everybody that is commenting and everybody that's reaching out to us via other sources and venues about the podcast. We do want to remind you that our podcast is based upon our experiences, which is now cumulatively, I believe we figured out about 46 years.
Yes.
That seems like we're old.
That's like a whole human's really long life.
That's our human's life. And our opinions are of our own making, and they come from experiences that we have had in the treatment industry, working with teens, adults in crisis, as well as corporate level and other venues that have really talked to us about what is holding human beings back. So this idea of the misconception of the mind is one of the things that we really like to play around with the most. If by chance we offend you, we apologize in advance. However, it is just an opinion. And if you feel so inclined to respond, please respond appropriately. And we love dialogue.
We absolutely do. We love conversations.
So that said, here we go.
Here we go.
So today's topic is one that I'm super excited about. So over the weekend, today, so if we do a marker, today is the 10th of August.
2020.
2020. And this last weekend we had this great experience of working with young men and women in a level 2 or discernment seminar, as we call it, a 3-day experiential process with some really powerful teens and really powerful experience. So it brought up this idea, Kate, that you have really been working on to understand. And so as we have kind of been talking through the weekend with it and then even into today, we really felt like this needed to be something that we shared with you, our thoughts and feelings and the discussion that we were having.
Right.
So why don't you launch us into it, being as this was really the thread you provided.
Yes. And what I also really love about it, Dean, is I know that I'm not alone in my wrestle with this. And so I love that we're bringing this to the listener in a way that hopefully, I guess we'll find out over the next 45 minutes to an hour, we'll really start to piece together some things that make being human difficult.
Yes. Yeah.
And that really is the topic that we're going to talk about tonight, you guys, is here we are, and I'll speak for myself, shall we, since that's the perspective I have. Here I am as a human being living on this planet, having a really incredible opportunity to be in this body and to have my mind and my emotions and all the things that make up a human. And yet it's the one thing that I either really avoid being and or want to expand and be greater than, to be superhuman, right? Like the idea of just being a human being isn't quite enough, and or it's a little bit terrifying to experience some of the things that we as humans go through. And so as I brought this topic to you, I was like, isn't it interesting? I find it so completely fascinating that we as humans have this amazing experience and this vehicle of a body to be able to navigate around the planet and to experience emotion and to, things as simple as like feeling the breeze on our skin on a spring day or in the fall, like summertime right now in St. George, Utah. It's
we love a breeze.
It is an oven out there, so any breeze is delicious. But all of those, like, really incredible, to be able to hold a baby or to kiss a lover and feel the electric shock that comes from, like, all of these amazing experiences that we get in being human through, especially for me, through our physical bodies. And yet, it's the one thing that we tend to avoid being the most. We either don't want to feel, or we don't. We want to be more than, right? We want to be the superhero. We don't want to have the limitations of being human, and so we like pendulum swing back and forth in this dichotomy of, gosh, I really don't want to experience all these emotions, and yet I need to be more. Like, I've got to be perfect. I've got to like rise up on this pedestal and be something that people can look at, instead of just really hunkering down into the now. And I feel like in every episode of our podcast, we really bring in the idea of mindfulness and being in the now and how powerful that is. And that's where we get our most beautiful, pure experiences, right? And Dean, I even brought this to you, like, it's those really human experiences that I crave, that I think we as a species really crave, right? Like, it's those moments. Today happens to be my father's birthday, August 10th, and he passed last year. And one thing that my sister Allison always brings out when we reminisce and talk about my dad is how he loved those moments, those really human moments, right? Like that magical Christmas morning moment, right? Or to be sitting on the beach with your loved ones and watch a sunset, like those really kind of raw, experiential that only humans get. Like I don't think that there's another species on the planet that can sit and watch a sunset on a beach and have a beautiful spiritual euphoric experience. Like, I'm not sure. Huh?
That we know of.
I'm not sure. Yeah, exactly. I don't know what it would be like. I'm, of course, going to say a cat to watch a sunset. And if they
I was thinking more along the lines of like a chimpanzee or a gorilla or an orangutan, something that's a little bit more emotionally evolved than a cat. But that's okay.
Well, that's your experience. I believe that cats are quite emotionally involved animals.
I know you do,
Mr. Nixon.
And I think at some point we're going to have a whole podcast on your beliefs around cats. I think, and listeners, let us know. I mean, if you really feel like we need to do a podcast on cats just for Kate, please leave it in the comments.
I would be so happy to just research my little brain.
I would love to hear your theories on
45-minute Kate's theories on cats.
Anyway,
but the point stands that I'm not sure, because I'm not an orangutan, right? I'm not a chimpanzee. I'm not a cat. I have my human experience, and I know that it can be quite magical, right? And super special. So I'm not sure if any other species experiences that, but however, how much I avoid and or chase something other than being human.
Well, and I think, you brought up some really cool ideas here, and I'm just over here jotting notes as quick as I can because I just love the direction that you're taking us, and I love the rabbit holes. You know that. I love diving head first down them like Alice, in Wonderland, and let's go down these things. And so one of the first things that really hits me when you start talking about the only species that perhaps experience these types of things is the fact that we really experience life, the humanness. To really define humanness, you really have to look at the five senses that we experience, right? So you've got to look at the sight, the sound, the smell, the taste, and the feel.
Right.
And you've got to look at those. But the part that I would say I would really like to understand more, and maybe we will, and maybe we can research more someday and do a follow-up podcast on it, is the difference, I think, between us and other species, from my knowledge and study and understanding, is that there is more of an emotional connection to the five senses than there is to other species. I think of a cat, the most emotionally aloof animal in existence. And I think that's why people have love-hate relationships with cats, for example. A lot of people are like really turned off by the fact that a cat really doesn't need you until it wants you. And then if it wants you, fine, you can touch me, pet me, etc. But otherwise, please leave me alone, or I'm going to ignore you, pretend you don't exist, or I'm going to bite and scratch the crap out of you. And I think that really turns a lot of people off as compared to like a dog.
Right.
Where a dog is continually emotionally tuned into what you need and what you want and where you are, and their goal is to consistently be of need. And sometimes even that's a little much. And so I think humans, we've always equated human beings to cats and dogs. We've always kind of identified with them. But I think it's because the humanness, what really, the difference for us to being human and maybe compared to other animals, chimpanzees, orangutans, and others, is that emotionally there is more of a connection to our senses. Whereas, there are animals that are very emotional. Like you watch a herd of elephants.
Oh, yes.
And you watch the intuitive behavior of an elephant, and how they work as a tribe. They work as a organism. organism, making sure I don't say the wrong word, which is also human.
Thank heaven. Let's just
You're
say
welcome, people.
Thank you, whoever designed human. Thank you.
I'm glad you like that one. But as we look at those different things that the elephants respond emotionally to it, but the response of an elephant is a little bit different. And I think where the other thing that makes us human is that we are really in tune emotionally to the five senses, but we are also in tune mentally to the five emotions. And I think this is another piece of the pie here, is that sometimes the mental overrides the emotional too much as a human, because mentally you can create emotional discord by the mental thinking, by what you allow yourself to mentally think. Where an animal is in tune, they are in tune, intuitive, emotional, but they don't overthink,
yes.
right? They don't overthink. And I think one of the other things that you really threw out there that I want to keep toying with as we kind of go along is this idea of memory, where
that's exactly where I was just thinking.
We as human beings, we want to create memories.
Yes.
There's my air quote fingers.
Moments. Yes.
Memories. And we really hang on to these moments and memories. And I would propose that the more nostalgic we are as human beings, the more prone to depression we are.
Oh, I would second that.
And I say that based upon my experience of us as human beings and my experience of working with human beings, is I find people that are a little bit more romanticized, a little bit more nostalgic, tend to be more prone towards depression, because it's always about loss. It's always about the good old days and the way things used to be.
Right. Well, I think that the depression, as well as the it's sometimes very hard to recreate those, right? And so then you have expectations, and you start to set yourself up for dissatisfaction in your life now, because not only do you live from a place of remembrance, but we also tend to, I love that you brought in romanticize, right? Because it's not necessarily the most accurate click of the moment, right? It's your memory of it. It's the ambiance it's bringing, and then also love that you brought in all the senses, right? Like it was your perspective of that moment, and then to try to recreate or have those again, you're never going to have all the same pieces to the puzzle. It's not going to click into place exactly the same, and so therefore we can become really dissatisfied and or depressed.
Right. Which I'm not. I want to be careful here, because as I walk that fine line with my statement, there is that's part of being human.
Absolutely,
is being depressed, and depression is a part of humanness. And we know that there is depression that is clinical. We know there's situational, etc. And we know these things, but the point being, I'm not like judging it good or bad. Hey, if you're this way, then you are bad. It's just, no, if you're this way, you're going to be more prone towards. So it is like, how do I govern that? And I think that's part of always what we're talking about, is how to improve. This is self-improvement. This is our venue. So, or self-help. And so it's really, there are some pieces here that you may pick up that, yes, the more I cling to memory, the more I cling to romanticism, the more I am going to be prone towards depression. But also, if I'm not romantic, if I'm not memory-driven, I can be a pretty cold person, and I may be missing a lot to being human, and missing a little bit of that nostalgia. As we always talk about, there's a balance in everything.
Absolutely, yes. And finding that balance in order to be able to, because really, our histories, they tell our story, right? And as much as we are always like speaking of being in the now and really being mindful, there's still a creation process that's happened that's made us who we are.
Yeah. And I love that you say our story.
As humans?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is the craziest thought to me.
Instead of mine? Or what?
Yeah, like, I know, like, you're, even where you're at right now, your mind's like, what? What am I doing? What am I doing wrong? Or what did I say wrong?
What did I say?
It's not that. It's just that, again, this was one of the notes that I was jotting down real quick, is who is me, or who am I? right? And that's what's so funny is like my story. Like, that's even the funniest part. Like, you can sit down, and I wish we had more of this in our world. It's gone away a little bit, but I know it's going to come back a little bit. But I remember home movies, right? When I was a kid, you'd sit down, Dad would get the reel-to-reel. You may have to, like, Google that if you're young. But you'd get the little projector out, you know, not the reel-to-reel. Reel-to-reel is the recording device, but the projector. And you'd put the little spool on, and you'd run it through the light and through the lens, and then you'd loop it again on the other one, and you'd start it like a movie, and you'd watch. And I remember being a kid watching these movies, these home movies with our family. We'd sit down and watch home movies. And I would watch myself, and I would be like, I don't even remember that. I don't remember that. When did that happen? And I see myself going through this story, this timeline, this video that I was there. It's me. It's undeniable.
Yeah, there's evidence there.
Except nowadays, you know, with the digitization of the world. I think we talked about this last week.
Yes, we did.
Anything could be digitized. But in those, no, I was there, but I don't remember that. So that leads me to this idea of our story. And what makes our story our story? Like, what makes you tell the story you tell about you the way you do? Does that make sense? That is human too. That was the other point I wanted to make.
Right.
Is that even the way you tell your story is a human thing.
Right. Like, it's probably like not even a thing that, you know, the lions get around the campfire and start to tell each other their stories. Right?
Yeah, but it's your version, right? So, like, I can watch the home movie and people can look at me and go, well, Dean, what was going on right there? What were you thinking? What were you doing? What were you feeling? And I'm like, I guess I was on vacation? I don't know what I was doing. I'm in swim trunks, and I'm in the ocean. So I was swimming in the ocean.
I probably was happy because I love to swim.
Because I'm a swimmer.
Like, if I'm speaking for you,
yeah.
Right?
So, but when I tell my story, I don't talk about that moment. You know what I mean? So if we had the story of a human being, like if we did the story of Kate Semmens, and we filmed you from birth, right? We put you on the screen from birth to today, and what is that, like 31? 30, 29, whatever you are, youngster.
Eternally 28.
28, you're 28 self. If we put that video on and we'd say, okay, this is the story of Kate Semmens, right? So here's where my crazy mind goes. This is the story of Kate Semmens, and then we sat down with you in another room, you never watching the movie, right? And then we sit down in the other room and say, okay, Kate, record your story. You tell it. We put you on microphone, put you on camera, and you tell your story.
Oh my goodness, wouldn't that be fascinating?
And then simultaneously in the other room, we put the person that watched your video, right, in another room recording your story, and then play both stories together. How much of those would line up?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? To me, that's the part that makes us human, is that me watching another person's life, and I'd be, okay, well, she was born here, and she had these types of friends, and she wore these types of clothes, and this is who she hung out with, and this is the family that she had, and she lived here from this year to this year, and very linear, right? I would tell your story very linear, where you would sit down and you would tell your story very emotionally.
Yes.
And that's a humanness. That's what makes us human, is that our version of who we are is taken through the perspective or the perception of who we are based upon what happened. Like, they could show a video of your birthday party, and I could watch the video, and you could relate the story of your birthday party, and I could relate the story of the birthday party. How trippy would that be?
Yeah. And what perception would come from either one of those things?
You know, you're like,
that would be wild.
You're like, and Janice, she was looking at me all snobby, and she was all mad, and that she didn't get these presents, and so I felt really upset, and so I was like, and then me over here telling the story would be like, well, she had cake, and she blew out candles, and she, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
That's where I'm going with
Yeah, a
that.
little bit more just on the logical side of it.
Yeah,
versus
so
the emotional
more,
side.
less emotional.
Right.
Because as I'm watching it, I'm not emotionally invested.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's what makes us human, is those five senses, but it's the emotional reaction to the five senses that really makes us human.
Right. Well, and we know that is how memories are actually created. There has to be an emotional experience, and then we tie it in with a sense or multiple senses, right? It's why smell can take us back
Yes.
to somewhere when I smell really specifically fresh baked rolls, like around Thanksgiving time, I'm in my grandmother's kitchen.
Yeah.
In 1985. And I'm there. I know what it looks like. I can see the, brown carpet that was I think brown was basically the rage in southern Utah for all of the 80s. I don't know why everything was brown.
Everything was very, very
just coming out of the
tones.
70s, you know what I mean? Like that.
We came out of the shag carpet, like Ronald McDonald carpet. So let's just do earth tones.
Right. Everything's brown.
But interestingly enough, and then I want to give you back to Mike, is the smell. Smell is the only sense that doesn't run through the frontal lobe. Mm-hmm. Like, smell is the one that goes directly to the cerebral core, and all other senses, sight, sound, taste, feel, all go through the logical process. So you feel something and then you process it. Mm-hmm. You see something and you process it. And then you may get a memory out of it. Smell is the only one that takes you directly. It overrides everything and goes directly to. And the hypothesis, the theory is because children need to be able to recognize the scent of their mother when they're infants, and so that's one of the first senses that develops in human beings is smell. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was interesting. It is
another fun side note for all of you that are potentially going back to school. We're here the week that school is going back to start. That is one of the coolest tricks when you're trying to memorize stuff for a test, is to wear a specific scent. And so then when you're in the testing environment, to wear that perfume or have that essential oil or whatever, and it will help you remember the information.
Wow, Semmens, you just taught me something new.
Yeah,
I've been doing this for a long time, and that's new.
Yeah, because I
might have done better in school had I known.
Yeah, I probably should have when they invent time travel, Dean, I will make sure to come back to Skyline High School and let you know.
And you'll just pull me aside and say, "Hey, bro,
smell.
Check this out."
It totally works. Yeah, but that's really cool. I didn't know that either. I didn't know that it completely bypassed the frontal lobe. So we've taught each other things today.
There you go.
So going back to that idea, though, of creating moments, and those being one of the reasons and one of the pieces that was my original proposition, right? That really we crave as humans, right? Like it's that. That I led with, that electric jolt that happens when you kiss somebody that you've got a really good connection with or are in love with, or just that overwhelming euphoria that can happen when you're for me, holding a new baby, like meeting a new niece or nephew for the first time, or when I get to have my own kids, right? All those kinds of things, and how significant those are, and how we kind of chase those a little bit, and yet at the same time seem to, for me, just throw up my hands and want to be more than that. I want to be a superhero, super person, right? I want to be more than human. I'm saying that I'm learning that to be human is exactly what I am, and the perfect place to be. But for so much of my life, it was how do I be more than this? Almost this is almost a condition, right? That I've been I've got this genetic condition that I've got to try to overcome and be better than, right? Which is bonkers. Where did that even come from? That is just insanity to think that to be human is something that's keeping me suppressed and holding me back, that I've got to become more than that.
Well, I think it comes from this idea, this as we were talking about earlier, is this, we really living in a time where human the idea of being human has been romanticized beyond its truth. We've got these ideal bodies that we're supposed to have. We've got these ideal lives that we're supposed to have. And I think back even 100 years ago, to the 1920s. Yeah, I was there. Whoa.
He wasn't. I was being mean.
Well, I thought people were going to buy it.
Oh.
So, I think back...
Dean, you still look so young.
I look so young. But I look back, 100 years. I look back 150 years. And we were romanticizing things. People still were struggling with the same issues, of wanting to be important, wanting to be loved, wanting to be valued. There was a level of romanticism that was going on. That's why literature has always been so impactful, and media and mediums have always been so impactful in our society. That's why we've had musicians for many, many centuries that have been writing sonnets and songs and parallels and poems to really romanticize life. But life wasn't very romantic. It wasn't like it is today. Like today, our kids are going through Facebook feeds and Twinder feeds and Skinder feeds and whatever the hell they are nowadays. And as they go through all of these feeds, everything is so romanticized. Yes. And we are living so external. We are so over leveraged and cantilevered so far out beyond. And I think about the cantilever. Cantilever is kind of a construction term. It's when we take a center of balance or a center, and we extend the center just off a little bit, and then we have to counterbalance it in order to not let it topple over. Okay. So, like if you go into an apartment, there's a loft, right? And the loft is kind of out over the rest of the apartment. There's a cantilever there so that it creates balance where you can walk as far out over this overhang as you are, and it's stabilized as far back, so to speak.
Okay, yeah.
And so it's overextended. Well, sometimes if you're not careful in building, if you cantilever too far, if your cantilever's off and it doesn't have enough support, or the beam that it's being cantilevered or whatever's being suspended isn't strong enough, it will collapse. And I think that's what's really happening to us in society is I think we're getting to a point where we're so overextended and so over beyond our reach, romanticized, that young men and women are taking their lives in epidemic fashion because there's no way I'm going to be able to attain this level of a perfect body, attain this perfect husband or wife or perfect children or be the perfect child. We are so confused by who we are nowadays that the idea of being human, and this is the part that I think is going to be controversial, and I look for probably a little bit of feedback on, is the idea of being human is being driven so deep into us that we have to argue for what gender we are. Like, we have to argue for that. Like, we have to debate it and go, no, I'm male, or I'm female, or I identify as male, or I identify as female, or I identify as binary. It's like, why are we even here? Like, why are we even at a place where there has to be a discussion? Well, that's because we want people's external validation so desperately that we want somebody to be able to go, okay, yeah, that's what you are, and acknowledge it rather than just going, screw you.
Rather than just
it's what I am.
Yeah.
And whether you give a shiz or not, I don't care.
Right.
And if you won't offer me services, if you won't provide me what I need, I will go out and create it. And I will make my own way, which has always been the American spirit from the beginning.
Right.
I mean, that was how America was founded, was on this idea of, okay, England, you're not going to give that to us? Watch this.
Yeah.
And we went out and we did it. We were controversial. The whole reason that we won the Revolutionary War. Here's my tangent. Oh, my Lord, I'm on a soapbox. The only reason we won the Revolutionary War here in America is because we stopped fighting war or battle in the formal way that Europe had been fighting it for centuries.
Yeah, that tradition.
These guys would line up on a field. They would stand across from each other, point a gun at the person, and pull the trigger, and that was war. Or they just meet toe-to-toe and they just, go there. Well, Americans were really the first to claim their freedom, I should say, through using guerrilla warfare. We had learned guerrilla warfare from the Native Americans that lived here before. They didn't fight that way. The Native Americans didn't line up on a battlefield and go, okay, we're going to slug it out right here. They would ambush. They would, and that's what Americans did. And that's how we claimed it, because we were like, okay, look, we are going to do things different. But we're kind of doing the same thing now. We're trying to line up on a battlefield and get people to acknowledge who we are, instead of just saying, I'm going to create it my own way, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
But that's a part of being human too, is living within yourself instead of overextending and being so far outside of you that you've lost the essence of you because you need somebody to tell you you're you.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that your cantilever analogy is brilliant, Dean. We should probably write it down and put it in a chapter in your next book or something. But that idea, and you went, full on our young people and or anyone really that would surrender their life and surrender being human, right, by committing suicide. But we see so much of this even in just people they call them failure to launchers, right? Like It's just easier to stay living in my parents' basement playing World of Warcraft or Fortnite or whatever it is that we're playing, and just ordering a pizza and not really moving myself forward because of that cantilever analogy that you were saying, right?
Right.
Like it's too far overextended, the romanticism, the airbrushedness that we live in now, that isn't an accurate picture of what real life really does look like.
Right.
And so therefore we can't live up to that. So might as well just check out, and however that checkout looks, right?
Yeah.
It could go as far as taking your own life.
Yeah, and I would almost call it pseudo suicide.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
100%.
It's pseudo suicide. It's this idea of, and it's not just gaming and disconnecting and failure to launch. It's drugs. It's alcohol.
Yes.
It's getting into the social media addictions that are out there right now, and needing people to like and send and whatever.
Right. That overreach, that overextension, that instead of just being you.
Right.
And really reveling in that and staying mindful and present. I listener, that once again I led with I wrestle with this, and I think that there's a lot of people that do as well.
All of us do.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. But it's definitely like the more that you do walk and get more light and on the path of enlightenment, that we talk about, right? Like that, it's not like you're just going to be hovering off the floor in lotus position and just always enlightened, right? Like it's a process and it's a constant unraveling, and it's back and forth. And it's another piece of of being human, is to, kind of waffle like that, I guess, for lack of a better term. How the farther along that I get in my path of enlightenment and in my waking up, so to speak, the more that I really do want and crave to just be me, and to be satisfied with that, and to not be hooked by all of those external things, all those cantilever pieces, right, that want to pull my attention out, and how that is starting to become romantic for me. Mm-hmm. Like that idea of really being able to sit in my own skin and just be completely and utterly present and satisfied with life sounds romantic.
Yeah. And I think that's another part that we struggle with, is this idea of evolution of who we are as humans. And I'm sitting here listening to you talk, and I'm thinking to myself, what do I want to evolve to? Yeah. And I realized, it dawned on me, I want to evolve to become an elephant. I want to eventually evolve into being an elephant, or a tiger, or something that really doesn't respond overly emotionally. Mm-hmm. Like it responds to a level that it's emotional appropriateness, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And there's no care to what the elephant looks like or the tiger or lion looks like. A lion's not looking in the mirror preening itself, and a lion's not looking around trying to figure out who it's supposed to be. Does a lion compete? Yes, a lion will compete for the pride,
right.
To be able to mate and to procreate. And a lion will eat when it's hungry and sleep when it needs to rest. And it lives in a state of abundance where it doesn't need more than it has. And an elephant, very much the same thing. And I think we as human beings, we don't live in a state of abundance. We live in a state of what will numb me out, what will help me feel better in my own skin. And I think you're kind of taking us, and I love, again, the rabbit holes you're taking us down, because I think you're taking us to another level here where being human and being in a human state of mind means that I need to get to a state of mind where I experience my life, right? And I'm always telling people, they come in and they're like, I need to find my purpose. I need to find my purpose. And I'm always like, dude, okay, well, tell me what you mean. Well, I need to be able to find a purpose, like saving orphans or writing a book or climbing Everest or blah, blah, blah.
Building a multi-million-dollar company.
Building a company, being retired by 27 and financially self-sufficient and, all these things that become what they think is their purpose in life. And I always pause them and I always say, listen, you have many purposes in this life that you will serve being a human being. But your full purpose in life, your purpose in life is simple. It's to experience life to its fullest. Because if we're a human being, that means I have 5 senses and an emotional compass that will help me experience life to its fullest. Am I experiencing life to its fullest? Well, if I'm numbing out, no.
Right.
If I'm disconnecting, no. If I'm living in my imagination 60% of the time, and this is what I propose that human beings spend 60 to 80% of their time in their minds rather than in their bodies.
I would agree.
And anybody out there that wants to challenge this statistic, please do. Because I don't have any legitimately firm, solid statistics to base that on.
Scientific evidence.
But my experience of dealing with people for 30 years, that's what I'm getting. This is I'm not like taking notes and doing some kind of like survey or post-survey or pre-survey, but this is just listening to human beings for 30 years. And a good 60 to 80% of the time, we're not in our body. We're not in those 5 senses. We're not experiencing life to its fullest. As a matter of fact, we're barely experiencing life.
At all.
We wake up in the morning and we go right into our schedules and into our heads, or we go right into what is it that it can make me feel better or feel different, or what do I have to accomplish today? And then we're motivated by that. And then we get, okay, who do I interact with? What am I doing to make them happy? What am I doing to solve this? What am I doing to earn a paycheck? And, driving down the road, having conversations in your mind with people that aren't even in the car, right? And we're going through this process where we're not even in our bodies, and we're not even experiencing the 5 senses. We're not even experiencing the emotional strength of being human being, but we're living beyond that. And we're cantilevered we're overextended into this external existence rather than truly, which ironically is an internal existence, right? So it's external, but it's internal. So it's this external experience driven deep into our internal mind.
Right. Yes.
That doesn't give us the ability to be human.
Right. And to actually embody ourself.
Right.
Well, and I know I've told you this before, but I will disclose this to the listener. In our discernment seminar that we do, our level 2 seminar, in the I am statement process, the first I am statement that I got in that was I am grounded. And it's still something that that I am statement that I walk with every single day, because for so many years I would literally describe myself as the floating head. Like I have a very optimistic, light vibrant personality, and it's difficult for me to really anchor into my body. It's something that I practice a lot, and the more that it's since been brought to my awareness that I actually don't spend very much time in my physical body, that I've become better at that. Have become more grounded, right? But I, for years, would look to others. In fact, I can tell you who my anchors were at any moment in my life. Like, for a long time, it was my best friend, Whitney, who passed away when we were 30. She got stage 4 small cell cancer. And I remember when all of that was going down, like how completely desperate I was to find my next grounder, basically, that I considered myself to be a balloon. And so that the proposition that you made, Dean, it rings 100% true to me, that's been my experience, and that it takes a lot of effort and a lot of mindfulness to ground into my body and to experience life in my human physical form instead of just getting totally up into my head all of the time.
Yeah. And it's intriguing how much those things become played out in this mental side of who we are. Mm-hmm. And, we talk about the physical, those 5 senses, we talk about the physicality of who we are. And instead of using our physical body and our 5 senses to experience life, I truly believe that we are using these 5 senses nowadays to avoid life. So I see people that are getting caught up in sexual addictions. They're getting caught up in pornography. They're getting caught up in masturbation and all these other things that are. And again, don't misunderstand. I'm not saying that masturbation is a bad thing. I'm just saying that people can get caught up in using that as an avoidance emotion.
The cantilever, right?
The cantilever.
It's
overextended. Mm-hmm. The pornography and all these other things that we're using to participate. Just like drug addiction. Mm-hmm. I'm starting to use drugs or alcohol to numb out. So I'm turning again to my physical body to avoid or to avoid experiencing life. Mm-hmm. So what that tells me, when people are doing this, what this tells me is they are overly connected to the external world emotionally.
Yes.
So they are their emotions aren't like, ooh, gosh, that sunset feels so amazing, and man, I love the taste of this food and the smell of the air, and I love it when I'm working out at the gym and the endorphin release that I'm getting, and really experiencing the experience of the body and the smell of cut grass and the coolness or heat of a breeze, whatever it may be. And instead of doing that, it's like, oh gosh, so-and-so may be upset with me, and that really bothers me. I don't like it when people are unhappy with me. I don't like it when people hate me, or the emotional trauma. This is one I wrestle with, the emotional trauma of my past and the memories and the people, and I'm getting caught up in the imagination and reliving it, and all of a sudden emotionally I'm upset. But I'm not using my emotions to experience life. I'm not using my emotions to taste and smell and feel and touch and look. I'm using them to go, okay, I need to eat something.
Right.
I need to touch something. I need to feel something. I need to watch something.
I need to numb out and scroll through the feed for the next 45 minutes to just get away.
Right. Mm-hmm. I need the Netflix for 3 days.
Yep.
I wish I could have one of those days. Honestly, listener, I've never been able to do that, but holy Hannah, I would love to just wake up Monday morning and go, what?
I'm going to binge watch an entire...
I started watching on Thursday. What happened? Someday.
Dina, once again, I love that you're bringing in the senses, right? Because they are the things that can ground us the best, and also the places that we can get swept away and not really experience being human as well.
Right.
And so once again, it's just finding that balance, because of course you're going to partake in a lot of those things, right? Like it's that's fantasy world to think that you're never not going to want to just chill out in front of Netflix and just kind of have a nice quiet evening instead of doing whatever other things would make you a little bit more stressed out, right? However, it's that chronic use, that escapism that we're talking about.
Well, and I love that. That's the humanness about us, right? Mm-hmm. Is like you're in physical pain, so you take an opioid to deal with the physical pain, and then you think to yourself, oh snap, that's amazing. So now you're going to misuse that process. Oh, now I'm super stressed out. I think I'm going to take some Percocet. Oh, I don't know if I like life, and I'm prescribed it because I have some pain or whatever it is. It was for my wisdom teeth 6 years ago. I had my wisdom teeth out 6 years ago, and so now what I'm doing is I'm misusing, and we can do the same thing. Is that we can have something that comes through our senses that's beneficial and helpful, like sexual experiences. Like when an individual, and I think of people, and the reason I'm thinking about this so much right now is because, with sex and sexuality, it's one of the things that we use the most to avoid with.
Yes.
And so you think of an individual has a sexual experience when you're young, and you're going through emotional hurt and pain. Let's say you're, an 11 or 12-year-old girl, and you feel physically unattractive or physically awkward in your body, and then somebody starts to introduce you to sexual activity, and you start to get aroused, and the endorphin release, and whatever it is, the next thing you know, you believe that, well, that's the solution.
Right.
So I'm going to participate in more of this activity because I'm going to experience it to its fullest. No, that's not what you're doing. You're trying to avoid the emotional pain of awkwardness, discomfort, not liking your body, not feeling comfortable in who you are. You're finding a way to circumvent it, if that makes sense. Or the adult who is in a marriage that isn't working, and they decide, they go to a party and they drink some alcohol, and then pretty soon it's like, okay, I'm just going to start drinking more. I'm going to drink more and more. And then, I'm just experiencing life to its fullest. Right. I'm going to have wine with dinner. I'm going to do this, and every night I'm going to have a cocktail and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm doing this to experience life. No, you're not. No, you've taken something that was healthy in one moment, and now you're trying to medicate the fact that things aren't going well in your marriage. So I'm bringing all these things out because this is my day-to-day life. This is what I'm dealing with in my couch. People come in as they sit down. This is why they're struggling, is because it's not because they have an addiction to alcohol. It's not because they have an addiction to sex and sexuality. It's because they're avoiding the emotional part of being human because they're overly connected to it. That has given them an addiction. If that makes sense.
100%.
Which is a part of being human. The question is are you willing to step into the emotional discomfort of being human and yet still experience life without being overly connected? That's why I want to evolve to an elephant.
Right.
An elephant's has an emotional experience, and we've seen this where, poachers, unfortunately, may take one of their pack or one of their herd, and they will mourn. They will stand over that thing. They will stand there for hours and days, and they will cry. But eventually, they move on, and they move forward. And they don't go and find every hunter they find and try and kill them. They don't try and find every human being and stomp them out. They don't do that. They just move on. And I think that's that part where we as humans, we need to evolve to that stage where we don't hang on to this emotional discomfort, because then we're going to have to numb out. Then we're going to have to disconnect.
Yeah, and I'm just having a thought that brought us back to when you were saying that the purpose in our lives as humans is just to experience life to its fullest, and how that one statement can be taken and be like, okay, great. So I've got to go to every country. I've got to experience every culture. That's like where I go, right? Like, oh, if I'm going to experience life to its fullest, and we have such an amazing capacity to be able to literally go and do almost anything, right? But that's impossible in a lifetime, right? That would be once again that cantilever, that overextension, because to experience life to its fullest is to be in your body, to feel all the senses, to feel all your emotions, to make connections. And if you never leave your hometown and you're experiencing all of that, then you're experiencing life to its fullest.
Exactly.
Whether or not you travel the globe or become famous or any of those other things that would be maybe some of those check boxes that people would be like, oh, if I'm going to experience life to its fullest, then I need to do this. No. You need to be in your body. You need to experience your emotions. You need to
Right.
revel in the senses that you have, and to be able to not overextend yourself, to stay in the now and in the moment, and be you, be your fullest expression,
Right. Because
unapologetically.
even traveling, a lot of people I see will get out and they will travel to avoid.
Oh yeah,
So
100%.
you getting out and traveling, it's like we were talking about with the sex, and well, I'm just going to experience life to its fullest and have a lot of partners and da 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 da, because that's no, or alcohol, or it's the same with travel.
It's the same. Oh yeah.
Yeah, like I can say, well, gosh, then I got to travel the world and I got to taste every food and I got to do all these things to experience life to its fullest. Well, no. Because if you go travel and you're still avoiding, you're not experiencing. If you go travel and you're still in your head, you're not traveling. If you're still going out and eating food, but you're still living in the trauma of the past, you're not fully living. That's the difference.
Yeah, if you're just doing it for that Instagram pic for the million views and the likes.
Because maybe, heck, man, if I go out and I blog enough, maybe I can make a living like those people that just travel all the time, right?
That's living life to its fullest.
That's living life to its fullest. Is it?
Right. Yeah.
Is it?
Good conversation.
I think it's an important thing for us. I think we're out of time today. We do have a shorter podcast for you today, but hopefully you are enjoying the dialogue and the topics, and hopefully we're sparking some ideas and thoughts in your mind, and hopefully inspiring you to live a little differently.
Yes.
More than anything. I know these conversations I always walk away wanting to do better.
Yes.
And wanting to be more human. And I know that my challenge this week is really going to be to stay in my five senses and to emotionally have boundaries with it so that I can really experience life to its fullest. And that's something, I struggle with, like every other human being.
Yeah. And so we would just challenge you as a listener to do that for you as well, to look at those places in your life where you may be cantilevered too far out, and maybe places where you're not as fully present and in all of you, and not just always up in your head. So we love you. Thank you for listening. Please join us in the next podcast. And as always, like, share, take this to the dinner table and the water cooler, like we like to say, make it a topic of conversation, and let us know what you think. We love the conversation. So have a wonderful week. We'll see you soon.